Okay, today we're going to talk about ratios and how to make equivalent ratios. So let's just review a little bit. A ratio is a comparison of two or more quantities. So if we want to write the ratio of footballs, I need my pen, of footballs to soccer balls, I have to put the number of footballs first because the word footballs comes first. So I would count 1, 2, 3, 4 footballs. So I'd have the ratio 4. And then you can use the colon, you can use the word two, or you can use a fraction bar. Fastest way is to use that colon. So 4 footballs to 1 soccer ball. The order that you write a ratio does matter. So since footballs comes first, you have to put the 4 first. Since soccer balls come second, you have to put the 1 second. All right, then we can do the ratio of basketballs to footballs. So now we'd go through and count the basketballs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'd have 6 colon to the number of footballs, which I already counted was 4. You can simplify this ratio since they both can be divided by 2. You can simplify the ratio by dividing them both by 2 to be 3 to 2. You don't have to do that at this time. I'm not going to take points off if you don't do that part, but just know you can simplify ratios just like how you simplify fractions if you can divide them both by the same number. Two ratios that describe the same relationship are called equivalent ratios. EQUIVALENT. I don't know why I just turned blue randomly. That's so interesting. So two ratios that are the same relationship are equivalent ratios. For example, 6 to 4 and 3 to 2 are equivalent ratios. Just like how you can have equivalent fractions, you can have equivalent ratios. Equivalent means equal. So they're not the same because they're different numbers, but they are equal to each other. You can find equivalent ratios by multiplying or dividing. Okay, you'd multiply or divide each number in that ratio by the same exact number. For example, to get this ratio to have an equivalent, you could do times 2 to get 6 and then times 2 to get 4. You have to multiply them both by the same number. Same with dividing. If you divide 6 by 2 and 4 by 2, you have to multiply them both by the same number in order to get an equivalent ratio. Okay, so for example, 2 cats to 3 dogs. I could multiply both those numbers by 3 to get an equivalent ratio. So 2 times 3 would be 6 cats, and 3 times 3 would be 9 dogs. As long as I am multiplying them both by the same exact number, we're good. Okay, same thing with dividing. You can get equivalent ratios by dividing. So I could divide 40 cats by 10. And as long as I divide 60 cats by the same number, which is also 10, it's going to be an equivalent ratio. So 40 divided by 10 would be 4 cats. 60 divided by 10 would be 6 dogs. Okay, so equivalent ratios, we're multiplying or dividing each number in the ratio by the same number. That's so important, the same number. I want you to take a minute, pause the video, and I want you to list as many as you can think of. I've got 4 lines here, so please try to come up with 4 equivalent ratios for this situation. 10 students, 12 pieces of paper. So pause the video, go ahead and write down some equivalent ratios. You can either multiply or divide to find those. Okay, so now we should already have these ratios written down because we should have paused it. So now I'll just go through some examples, and there's multiple different answers. So one example would be multiplying them both by 2. So that would be 20 students to 24 pieces of paper. You could multiply them both by 3. That would be 30 students to 36 pieces of paper. Okay, you could divide them both by 2. That would be 5 students, 6 pieces of paper. You could multiply them both by 10. That would be 100 students and 120 pieces of paper. As long as you're multiplying or dividing them by the same number, you have an equivalent ratio. This is a 0, by the way, not a 6. Okay. All right, let's keep going. Flip it over to the back. So on the front, we decided how to write equivalent ratios. On the back, you're going to be given ratios, and we're going to decide if they are equivalent or not. So if we can multiply those numbers by the same thing to get our second numbers. For example, to go from a 7 to a 49, I have to do times 7. So for it to be equivalent, that would mean 5 times 7 would have to equal 35, and it does. So yes, this one is equivalent. If, let's say, this bottom number was like 40, 5 times 7 is not 40, so then we'd say, no, that's not equivalent. Okay, next one. 5 times 6 is 30. So we'd have to do times 6 on the bottom. Is 8 times 6 48? Yes, it is. So these are equivalent. Okay. Six times 6 is 36. So then 5 times 6 would have to be 30. And yes, that is equivalent. Okay, it just happened that all these are equivalent. It's not always going to work out like that. For example, like if we have 3/4 equal to, let's say, 12 24ths. Okay, 3 times 4 equals 12. 4 times 4 does not equal 24, it equals 16. So that's a situation where we would say, no, they're not equivalent. Okay. We also might come into situations where they give us a ratio and then they give us one number in the next ratio, in the equivalent ratio, and we have to find that missing piece. You're going to have some of these in your homework. So you complete 8 math problems every 10 minutes. You continue to work at the same pace, so we're finding the missing number to make equivalent ratios. So if I'm going from 8 problems to 4 problems, I'm dividing by 2. Remember, you have to multiply or divide. You cannot add or subtract. Therefore, I would do 10 divided by 2 to get 5 minutes. So an equivalent ratio would be 4 problems in 5 minutes. Okay. Then I'm going from 8 problems to 32 problems. In order to go from 8 problems to 32 problems, I have to multiply times 4. So now I have to do the same thing with the 10 minutes and do times 4 to get 40 minutes. Okay. Same idea for this next part, except for now we're missing the number of problems and we're given the number of minutes. So if I'm going from 10 minutes, I wanted that to be a different color. Hang on. If I want to go, why is it doing that? If I want to go from 10 minutes to 60 minutes, I have to multiply times 6. So I'd have to do the same thing to the number of problems, and 8 times 6 is 48. Okay. Now I'm trying to go to 30 minutes. So if I'm going from 10 to 30 minutes, I would have to do times 3. So then I'd have to do 8 times 3 to get an equivalent ratio, and that would be 24. Okay. And that's how you find equivalent ratios. That's it.